Ladies and gentlemen, there's something quietly powerful about feeling truly appreciated, and for many men, it's far rarer than people realize. In a world where expectations are often high and acknowledgement is low, a genuine expression of appreciation can feel like a breath of fresh air. It's not about flattery or exaggeration. It's about noticing the things he does, the effort he puts in, and the intentions behind his actions, and choosing to say it out loud. Think about it. How often do people assume that men should just do what they're supposed to do, without needing recognition? He works hard, solves problems, shows up, stays strong, and yet, those things often go unspoken. But when a woman takes a moment to genuinely appreciate those efforts, it lands differently. It tells him, I see you. I value you. You matter. And that message can stay with him far longer than you might expect. What makes appreciation so powerful is its sincerity. It's not about rehearsed compliments or saying something just for the sake of it. It's about being present enough to notice the little things, how he handled a difficult situation, how he tried to make your day easier, how he stayed patient when things weren't going his way. When you acknowledge those moments, you're not just complimenting him, you're affirming his character. And here's the beautiful part. Appreciation doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. A simple, I really respect how you handled that, or I noticed what you did for me today, and it meant a lot, can go a long way. It's in these small, genuine statements that emotional connection begins to deepen. Because when a man feels appreciated, he doesn't just feel good, he feels motivated to give more, to be more, and to invest even deeper into the relationship. There's also a quiet reassurance in appreciation. It creates a space where he doesn't feel like he has to constantly prove himself. Instead, he feels accepted for who he is and what he brings. And in that space, trust grows naturally. Walls come down, communication becomes easier. The relationship starts to feel less like a performance and more like a partnership. But perhaps most importantly, appreciation shifts the entire dynamic. It moves the focus away from what's lacking and onto what's already meaningful and good. And when you consistently highlight the positive, it doesn't just uplift him, it strengthens the bond you share in a way that criticism never could. So if there's one thing to remember, it's this: never underestimate the impact of letting someone know they are seen, valued, and respected. Because sometimes the simplest words, spoken with sincerity, are the ones that leave the deepest mark on the heart. And just as appreciation has the power to uplift him, the way those words are delivered carries a power of its own. Because it's not only what you say, it's how you say it that truly reaches a man's heart. Tone is something people often overlook, yet it shapes how every message is received. The same sentence can feel comforting or cutting, inviting or distant, depending entirely on the energy behind it. There's a quiet strength in softness. It doesn't mean or silence. It means choosing calm over chaos, warmth over sharpness, and understanding over reaction. When a woman speaks with a gentle, steady tone, especially in moments that could easily turn tense, it creates a sense of emotional safety. And that safety is something many men don't often experience openly, but deeply crave. Think about moments of disagreement. It's easy for conversations to become battles, voices rise, defenses go up, and suddenly it's no longer about understanding each other, but about winning. But when your tone remains composed and grounded, it changes the entire direction of that interaction. Instead of triggering resistance, it invites openness. Instead of pushing him away, it draws him in. A soft tone signals respect. It tells him that even when you don't agree, you still value him. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because when a man feels respected, he's far more willing to listen, to reflect, and to meet you halfway. But when he feels attacked or dismissed, his instinct is to shut down or pull away. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or avoid difficult conversations. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Softness allows you to express even the hardest truths in a way that can actually be heard. It gives your words clarity instead of clutter. impact instead of intensity. It's the difference between saying, "You never listen to me," and calmly expressing, "I feel unheard sometimes, and that matters to me." One creates distance, the other creates connection. And there's something deeply disarming about gentleness. In a world that often feels loud and demanding, a calm and reassuring presence stands out. It becomes a place of comfort, a place he associates with peace rather than pressure. Over time, he begins to lean into that energy, to trust it, and to open up in ways he might not elsewhere. Softness is not about being passive, it's about being intentional. It's choosing to respond instead of react, to understand before being understood. And in doing so, you create an environment where both of you can communicate freely without fear of being judged or overwhelmed. Because at the end of the day, it's not the loudest voice that leaves the deepest impact. It's the one that speaks with calm, care, and quiet confidence that truly stays with him. And then there are those moments that come out of nowhere, the small, thoughtful gestures that he never asked for, never expected, but never forgets. Because while big, grand displays of affection can be beautiful, it's often the quiet, unexpected acts of kindness that leave the deepest imprint on a man's heart. There's something incredibly meaningful about being thought of when you're not even in the room. It tells him that he lives in your mind beyond the obvious moments, that your care isn't conditional or routine, it's intentional. Maybe it's as simple as bringing him his favorite snack without him mentioning it, sending a message in the middle of a busy day just to check on him, or remembering a small detail he once shared and turning it into a kind gesture. These moments may seem small on the surface, but emotionally, they carry weight. What makes these acts so powerful is the element of surprise. They break the pattern of expectation and replace it with something genuine and heartfelt. He's not receiving kindness because it's a special occasion or because it's expected. He's receiving it because you chose to give it purely out of care. And that distinction matters. It shifts the gesture from routine to meaningful. It also shows attentiveness. It tells him that you're not just hearing him, you're truly listening. When you remember the little things he says, the things he likes, the things that matter to him, and you act on them, it creates a sense of being deeply understood. And for many men, that kind of emotional recognition is rare and incredibly valuable. These gestures don't require perfection or planning. In fact, the most impactful ones are often spontaneous. A warm cup of tea when he's tired, a note of encouragement when he's stressed, or even just offering your presence when he needs quiet support. These are the moments that build something real. They don't demand attention, but they earn it. And over time, these small acts create a pattern. They become part of the emotional fabric of the relationship, building trust, comfort, and connection in ways that words alone sometimes cannot. Because while words can express love, actions reinforce it. They make it tangible. They make it felt. What's also important to understand is that kindness has a ripple effect. When a man experiences genuine, thoughtful care, he naturally feels inspired to return it, not out of obligation, but out of appreciation. It creates a cycle where both people begin to give more freely, more naturally, and more consistently. In a world where people are often caught up in their own routines and distractions, taking a moment to do something kind, something unexpected, becomes incredibly powerful. It cuts through the noise. It reminds him that he matters, not just in the big moments, but in the everyday ones. Because sometimes it's not the grand gestures that stay with someone, it's the quiet, thoughtful ones that arrive without warning and speak directly to the heart. And as meaningful as thoughtful actions can be, there's something even more powerful, something that doesn't require doing, fixing, or solving anything at all. It's the simple, yet rare ability to truly listen, not just to hear words, but to understand what's behind them. Because for many men, being genuinely listened to without interruption or judgment is one of the most disarming and deeply connecting experiences they can have. You see, a lot of the time, when someone opens up, the immediate instinct is to respond, to give advice, to correct, to analyze, or even to relate it back to our own experiences. But what he often needs in that moment isn't a solution. He needs space. Space to express, to process, and to feel heard without the pressure of being evaluated or fixed. When you listen attentively, you're offering him something incredibly valuable, your presence. You're telling him, without saying a word, what you feel matters. What you're saying matters. And that kind of validation creates a sense of emotional safety that allows him to open up more freely. There's a quiet comfort in not being interrupted, in not having your words rushed or redirected. When you let him finish his thoughts, when you maintain eye contact, when you respond with patience instead of urgency, it shows respect. It shows that you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, you're truly engaged in understanding him. And perhaps even more important is the absence of judgment. Because the moment someone feels judged, they begin to filter themselves. They hold back. They become cautious. But when he knows he can speak openly without being criticized or dismissed, something shifts. He becomes more honest, more vulnerable, and more connected. This doesn't mean you always have to agree with everything he says. It simply means you allow him to express himself fully before forming a response. It means choosing empathy over assumption, curiosity over conclusion. Sometimes a simple, "I understand why you feel that way," can mean more than a long explanation ever could. Attentive listening also strengthens trust. It builds a foundation where communication becomes easier, more natural, and more meaningful over time. Because when a man feels heard, he doesn't feel alone in what he's carrying. And that sense of partnership, of being understood rather than managed, creates a deeper emotional bond. In many ways, listening is one of the purest forms of care. It doesn't require grand effort or elaborate planning. It simply requires intention. Being fully present in a moment where distractions are set aside and the focus is entirely on him. And in a world where people are often more focused on being heard than on listening, choosing to truly listen sets you apart in a way that's both rare and unforgettable. Because sometimes, the deepest connection isn't built through what you say. It's built through your willingness to quietly, patiently, and wholeheartedly hear him. And as that connection deepens through listening and understanding, something even more transformative begins to take shape: the power of trust. Not just trust in the relationship, but trust in him as a man. Because when a woman expresses genuine belief in who he is and what he's capable of, it touches something deeper than surface-level affection. It speaks directly to his sense of purpose, his identity, and his confidence. There's a quiet strength that comes from knowing someone believes in you, especially during moments of doubt. And like anyone else, men have those moments more often than they show. The pressure to succeed, to provide, to figure things out, it can be heavy. And while the world may expect him to carry that weight without hesitation, your belief in him can become the one place where that pressure feels lighter. Expressing trust isn't always about big declarations. It's often found in the small, everyday moments, letting him make decisions without second-guessing him, supporting his ideas instead of immediately questioning them, encouraging his efforts, even when the outcome isn't certain. These actions send a clear message: I trust your judgment. I believe in your ability. And that message can be incredibly empowering. Because when a man feels trusted, he naturally steps into that trust. He becomes more confident, more decisive, more willing to take initiative. Not because he has to prove something, but because he feels supported rather than scrutinized. It shifts his energy from self-doubt to self-assurance. On the other hand, constant doubt or control can slowly wear that confidence down. When every decision is questioned or every action is corrected, it creates hesitation. It makes him feel like he's always being evaluated rather than accepted. And over time, that can create distance. But belief, real, consistent belief, does the opposite. It builds him up in a way that no external validation ever could. It becomes a steady source of encouragement that stays with him even when you're not around. Your words, your tone, your reactions, They all contribute to how he sees himself. And this doesn't mean ignoring flaws or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing to focus on his strengths, his potential, and his intentions. It means recognizing that growth takes time and that support is far more effective than pressure. There's also something deeply bonding about knowing that someone is on your side, not just when things are going well, but especially when they're uncertain. When you stand beside him with confidence instead of doubt, it creates a sense of partnership that feels solid and unshakable. Because at the end of the day, belief is more than just words, it's a feeling you give someone. And when a man feels that you truly trust him and believe in him, it doesn't just strengthen the relationship, it strengthens him. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give a man isn't control, advice, or correction. It's the unwavering confidence that he already has what it takes. And when all of these elements come together, appreciation, softness, kindness, listening, and trust, they naturally open the door to something even more instinctive and deeply human physical connection. Not the grand, dramatic kind often portrayed, but the quiet, subtle moments of affection that speak without words and are felt far beyond the surface. There's a unique kind of reassurance in a simple touch. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't interrupt, it just exists, gently reminding him that he's close to you, that he's wanted, that he belongs in your space. A hand resting lightly on his arm during a conversation, a brief squeeze of his hand as you pass by, or leaning your head on his shoulder after a long day. These small gestures carry an emotional weight that words often struggle to match. What makes subtle affection so powerful is its timing. It shows up in between moments, when nothing special is happening on the outside, but everything meaningful is happening underneath. It's not planned or performed, it's natural. And because of that, it feels real, it feels honest. For many men, physical affection is one of the clearest ways they experience emotional connection. It grounds them. It reassures them. It becomes a quiet language that says, "I'm here with you," without needing to explain anything further. And in a world where they are often expected to stay composed and controlled, these small moments allow them to feel warmth without pressure. There's also a sense of comfort that builds through consistent, gentle touch. It creates familiarity, a kind of emotional rhythm between two people. Over time, those little gestures become something he looks forward to, not because they're extravagant, but because they're sincere. They become part of how love is expressed daily, without needing an occasion. And it's important to understand that subtle affection isn't about intensity, it's about intention. It's not about how big the gesture is, but how naturally it's given. Even something as simple as adjusting his collar, brushing his hand lightly, or pulling him closer for a brief moment can create a lasting impression. These are the gestures that stay with him long after the moment has passed. In many ways, these quiet expressions of closeness reinforce everything else you've built. They reflect appreciation without words, softness without explanation, kindness without effort. They become the physical extension of emotional connection. And perhaps what makes them most meaningful is that they ask for nothing in return. They're not transactional. They're not calculated. They simply exist as a reflection of how you feel. Because in the end, it's often these small, unspoken moments, the gentle touches, the quiet closeness, that say the most, reminding him in the simplest way possible that he is valued, desired, and never alone.